Recently, one of the Remnant 2 devs hopped into a live stream to show off more of the gameplay. The two gentlemen in this footage conversed about new features being added and what mechanics will be translating from the first game. Here are some of the more important bits I thought that you should know about. You can find different types of dragon hearts that can heal you in different ways. The regular one just gives you a heal, while others might provide healing over time or leave a pool of healing on the ground. Relics can now be found throughout the world, and they're going into your healing item, providing you with things like more stagger damage or more ranged critical damage. 3 can be applied at any given time. They grant you more and more bonus depending on what difficulty you're playing on. I'm unsure if you actually need to take the Dragon Heart first to get these buffs though. It looks like the effect is active all the time, but nothing else was mentioned on these. There are some hidden walls in the open sections of the game, and you'll need to explore carefully or risk missing stuff. The open sections also look to be much larger than they were in the first game, which could be bad or good. We'll have to wait and see. A lot of guns from the first game will be returning, but there will also be loads of new ones. Just from the ones you can start with, we can see you have access to nearly twice as many gun options than there was in the first game. Melee also has plenty of options if that's what you're going for. This game is adding a Bloodborne-esque healing system where 50% of damage taken goes to recoverable health. Rather than attacking to regain that health though, you instead just regen that portion until you get hit again or heal up. A major change is that co-op does not progress you through the game if you play in a friend's world. This is because each time you start the game, everything changes, from which region you start in to what part of the story you're on. I could see a lot of people not liking this, and I'm not the biggest fan either, but I will say you have to play Remnant over and over to get all the guns and items that randomly occur. So playing through your campaign and then your friends won't really change that too much. Which leads into the story. You can start in different biomes and select different dialogue to reach different outcomes. Certain options with NPCs can grant you traits, while others will get you thrown in jail. It sounds like there are set storylines and region starts, but you'll randomly be selected into however many there are. As for now, there are no saved loadouts and no barbershop to change your character's look. The guy said they're looking at maybe doing both options, but not sure, which in my opinion would be a huge mistake. Remnant from the Ashes really suffered from not having saved loadouts. With even more equipment options in this sequel, we'll really be sifting through too much stuff and classes wasting way too much time. Saved loadouts need to be a priority if you ask me. A new aspect being added are injectables, random mini events or even dungeons that can spawn inside a dungeon. So now you need to explore those side areas to find extra events, essentially. These sound like they're going to be very randomized. Another huge change, armor now provides no stats to the player other than resistances. So armor is just like every other Souls and Souls-like, mostly cosmetic. Obviously, the resistances can make a difference, but that's all they do, and I really don't like this change. Armor felt special in Remnant because you could wear different pieces and create a unique set of stats while making sure you kept your weight manageable. Now that you have archetypes or classes you can switch between, armor isn't even really required. Obviously, this won't ruin the game because there are many other ways to customize your builds and select unique setups. But this is still a big deal. Finding new armor sets won't mean nearly as much as it did before, and if you have to buy them, there's no chance I'm wasting resources on anything but the most defensive set. Not an awful change, but not my favorite for sure. Most enemies now don't have hit scan. In the first game, a lot of enemies with guns would instantly hit you if they shot, so you had to be moving full speed or dodging to avoid damage from ranged attacks. This has now been removed for the most part, adding a slight delay to shots. Ammo boxes no longer reload your guns. They still grant you full ammo, but you can't reduce reload time by quickly grabbing bullets. This is apparently essential as some weapons deal more damage but reload slowly, which prevents you from negating their downside. And let's be honest, more balance is a good thing as Remnant could get a little crazy in that department. People who enjoyed the Minion or Summon class will be very happy in this sequel. That's all that was mentioned, but it sounds like more minions are a guarantee. Stamina runs out faster in combat. Dodging and running will need to be used sparingly, as before, you could dodge 5 or 6 times and still run after. Now, it's much more focused on you timing rolls correctly and running when you have to. Trait points can be found in the open world, but they are granted largely by defeating bosses and events. You can get shield in this game, which is interesting, so a new type of build will likely come into play maximizing shield instead of health. All classes will have team-based perks, but these also benefit you when you're not with a team, so each class supports the other even if it's a, say, DPS class. There are apparently melee weapons you can throw. We didn't see any, but that sounds pretty cool. Also, melee was said to be improved a bit in terms of combo attacks and feel. Looked pretty much the same to me, but that's what they said. Power level is now shown on the map for each area. You can check your own power level in your inventory. This was a huge problem in Remnant, as not ever upgrading your equipment actually made the game a lot easier. You could get the best armor, but since level was based on your gear, the bosses would not have more health. So killing tough encounters in under 10 seconds was pretty common. Now upgrading is not only encouraged, but required, as some of the rewards will be better if you're at a higher level. Those excited to use the LMG just know it overheats. I was excited about this weapon, but now I don't even really know if I want to grab it. This is personal preference, of course, so no biggie, but yeah, it seems to overheat rather quickly as well. All world bosses have an alt kill, which is something I recently talked about in a video mentioning how much this added to the game. Pretty happy about this, as it makes taking on the same boss twice still engaging and fun, trying to figure out how else you can defeat them. The map is now 3D, which lets you tell what level you're on and move it around to get a better idea of where you're at. Honestly, it looks pretty good from what I could tell. It was also mentioned several times that boss fights would have less ads in them. This should completely be ignored, however, as it's obviously not true. We were shown 3 different boss fights and all 3 had ads. But I don't really know what people were complaining about this in the first place. The ads, or mini enemies, were a core part of the Remnant boss fights. Not all of the fights had these in the first game, but most did. And the ads are often what gives you the challenge. Simply shooting a boss isn't that hard once you know what he does. Shooting a boss while ads jump at you is hard. Also, the little enemies were often what gave you your ammo back, as bosses only die once, and at that point you don't need ammo because the fight's over. I will admit there were a few boss fights from the first game that felt a little stupid. Maybe too many ads, which they did mention they did tone them down, and there are a lot less ads in the fights. But they're still there. And expect them in the sequel, because like I said, we saw them in every boss fight. Maybe in different forms, such as tentacles, flying root, or butterflies, but they are there. Now, there were other things shown off in the live stream, such as cool weapons and mods, but I covered all the big stuff. A lot of this is really exciting, but let's talk about one major issue. Remnant from the Ashes was criticized by many for its world design. The maps were changed based on which dungeon randomly spawned, and it made grinding gear a little bit annoying. Rather than moving away from this, they seem to have pushed much deeper. The game feels much more roguelike now, with the dungeons changing and there being many more random encounters. Also, with the story itself beginning at a different place each time. I'm not saying it's bad, in fact it could be really good because variety is much more fun to play than linear areas, most of the time. However, the walking bits in between important locations and bosses felt way too long. They're definitely much larger than in the first game. Plus, now that you need to scour every inch to look for hidden walls and unique chests, it's going to get tedious. Of course, this could have been one area that just felt a little too long, but I think it's worth noting the areas look much bigger. So those are the big changes I noticed in the upcoming Remnant 2. A lot of exciting stuff, and even though some of the changes sound not to my liking, I'm sure it will be a pretty great game. It's been said to be launched in summer of 2023. Don't expect it in summer though, because September is the tentative launch date right now, and that's literally the very end of summer and even beginning of fall. It's still going to be a while, guys. Also, with all the talks of the things they're thinking of adding and maybe working on, don't expect an earlier release date. The gameplay looks fun though, and shooting bad guys looks satisfying. Ultimately, that's what I'm interested in, so hopefully this informed you more about the upcoming game and was at least somewhat interesting. Feel free to comment down below what change you like or dislike the most. I personally really dislike the armor change, but they kind of had to do that with the archetype system, so maybe you guys feel differently. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.